If you're taking on the role of being a director, you've signed up for a big task.
Making sure companies are paying for performance is the biggest challenge facing compensation committees today.
Corporate Board Member presents the Board Governance Series, with series contributors PricewaterhouseCoopers and Meridian Compensation Partners.
In each edition of our Board Governance Series, we ask a common question of our series partners that will be helpful to both our boards and our readers. In this edition, we ask the question, will SayonPay Rules change the current compensation committee thought process?
They probably will. It's going to, first of all, put a lot more focus on the disclosure. And what we're seeing more companies think about is really clearly articulating their mission statement for what they're trying to accomplish with compensation, sort of as part of an introduction to their compensation discussion and analysis. And then making sure that the detail that's buried in the compensation discussion and analysis really corresponds and doesn't contradict what they've said their overall mission statement is. From a broader perspective, though, we think that this is really going to change the lens that compensation committees use when they look at their decisions. So they may make a compensation decision, but they're going to have to think about what does this mean for what we're going to have to disclose in the CD&A? What does this mean for a possible impact on how shareholders will view it and take it into account when they are doing their SayonPay votes? And we know, for example, that shareholders are really looking at company performance and peer groups. So, for example, if a comp committee decides to pay a retention bonus, but the company hasn't had a very good year and hasn't performed well, that's the kind of thing that's going to look very contradictory and probably give shareholders a little bit of heartburn. I guess the other thing is to think through whether or not the board or the comp committee wants to directly engage and get the views of shareholders on the pay packages, and if so, how are they going to do it? Are they going to go out and talk with the portfolio managers, or do they want to go and talk with the people who make the voting decisions at the various shareholders? So there's a whole strategy around that. But bottom line, we do think that these SayonPay rules, and as they start to roll out, starting in 2011 for most companies, are going to have an impact on comp committees.
Certainly SayonPay has the attention of all compensation committees, and no compensation committee wants to see shareholders vote down their executive pay programs. However, it's fair to say that compensation committees and management over the last few years have been modernizing their pay programs, and certainly with the current issue of SayonPay, they have been refreshing that look and looking again, is there any areas that need to be weeded out? Are there any problematic pay practices? But basically, SayonPay is a continuation of a long trend among management and compensation committees to scrutinize and determine what's appropriate in terms of pay packages. So while SayonPay is certainly an important corporate governance milestone and will undoubtedly influence compensation committees, particularly this year, it's the first year, it remains to be seen whether it will cause a sea change in the deliberations of compensation committees.
The Board Governance Series is a presentation of Corporate Board Member, an NYSE Euronext company.